Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And bet you didn't think you would see us back here for a Game 7 video. I know we didn't necessarily expect to be back for that, but the Heat did come through much better percentage from three than we've seen, even without Tyler Hero in this one. Max Strus and Kyle Lowry came alive. So we'll take a look at some of the stuff that we like here in Game 7 as well. Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com. Plenty of the best bets, some player props as well in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us. We're going to nail this game down here, and then we are going to jump into every game of the finals as they move along into the month of June. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for Game 7. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, the C's, despite getting outplayed for most of that game, are favorites in Miami, -2.5. The total opened around 199. It's been bet down to 197 at some spots, as we have seen plenty of great defense in this series. I'm intrigued by a couple of markets involving the over here. The Heat money line with the over, because they're underdogs, is +280. And I think that there's a better path for points being scored and Miami winning than for a low-scoring game where the Celtics, completely shut them down the last previous two games. So what I'm saying is, if Miami can find that type of success on offense, again, I think they'll certainly be in the game and with a chance to win it at home. And the Celtics, notably, have been really bad in close games. They kind of seem to figure that out in the Milwaukee series. Some might point out Game 6. It didn't really inspire a lot of confidence for me how they won that game. It was a lot of just Jason Tatum locking in and hitting contested threes and jumpers all over the place and scoring like 20 straight points for the Celtics. It's not like their team offense started to click in clutch time. I mean, the big thing is how the games are officiated in clutch time. It's a war of attrition with these teams. They clutch and hold everywhere, especially the Heat. And off the ball, they were just completely holding Tatum. He couldn't get the ball. He had 2 field goal attempts in the final quarter. Tatum and Brown, after going for 18 each, 8 points, 5 turnovers in the fourth. Brown, those 2 crucial missed free throws that kind of let it slip. And then the Heat come back. I mean, I'm here to heap praise on Jimmy Butler, who, we said couldn't, there's no way he can recover from a knee injury in one day. Well, apparently he can. They shot it up with whatever. It wasn't as much like, wow, look at the explosion. It certainly was there. It just was an all-time, a heart of a champion, a guy who's just not going to let his team lose. Shades of LeBron James in Game 6 in the Garden, and unbelievable effort. That Kyle Lowry, also a nice bounce back game. He is just insufferable though with his antics, and the fact that he fouled out and was still standing next to Spo with his jersey on and almost touched Horford on a 3-point attempt. It's just utter shenanigans. 6 fouls on the game, probably had 10 in terms of just grabbing dudes. The point is he can't keep guys in front of him, and neither can Strus, who also fouled out, also deserving, was grabbing Tatum every time he got past him. But both those guys were just very, very clutch shot makers in this game. And that's a question of whether you say, is that lucky? Is that unsustainable? They hit a lot of deep threes, a lot of timely threes. With Lowry, I mean, there's at least a sample size to say, no, he's going to come to play in these clutch games. He's not going out like that. With Strus, he's a very good shooter as well. And if the rotation is there, they'll be able to hit. So I do think that Miami's going to be able to score, even with Tyler Hero probably unlikely to play in this one, that Miami will get over 100 points. And I don't think the Celtics are going away easy no matter what. So I think the over is a good bet here to back that again. Miami, you look at their home road splits in these playoffs, they score 7 points per game more, much better offensive rating. Their 3-point shooting has sort of regressed to the medium now because Game 6, they shot 45% on the road, and that kind of shifted things. But the pace is higher at home. They average 4 more free throw attempts at home. I think there will be a lot of whistles in this game. We don't yet know who's going to officiate it, but there's a chance we have Scott Foster in there in putting his fingerprints on this. And I would be intrigued by the Heat margin of victory 1 through 10 points. Cause like I said, I don't think the Celtics are going away easy, but I don't trust them in close games to get their shot. Certainly not what I want, but at plus 210, it's something I would look at. And if you are trying to take the Celtics, just the Heat to get 99 points, like I said, I think they get 100. Heat 99 points is minus 104 at FanDuel. I think Butler just seemed unstoppable. Marcus Smart was like a fly being swatted away from him. And the Celtics don't have many options if he's going to be that locked in. Just hitting so many tough shots and doing what he does that I think as long as he's going to play like that, Miami can score.
So all that said about Jimmy, I like points, right? And that's where I really start and feel the most comfortable. And as I said a minute ago, so I think it's a little bit more of a pick 'em, even if you want to talk about taking value from the fact that it is pretty much a pick 'em. The Heat are dogs at home, a place that they played really, really well during the regular season. That's the value there if you're talking about EV, but like the thing that I feel most comfortable on when I'm putting my money down on this game is the over, and that's indicative from that is indicated clearly through the splits in terms of home for Miami. They score more points there, a bunch more, and then the complete opposite for Boston. They've in these playoffs specifically, they've been scoring more points when they're on the road by about, I believe, 4 more points per game. They both play the same level of defense on the road and at home, giving up pretty much the same amount of points, about 100 or 102 in that range. But they're, like I said, both scoring around 109 on the road for the C's, 108 at home for Miami. I do think you can get over the 197. It feels too low when we're talking about this, unless Vegas is considering the sort of the tightening up of the sphincters when you get into a game 7, which I don't know. You got some big game players in here. You've got a lot of talent on Boston to be able to spread around the ability to score, especially with Brown and Tatum. And then in Miami, I don't think Jimmy's sphincter specifically gets too tight in these situations, as we just saw when you put him up against the wall. That seems to be when he just sort of everything slows down for him, man, and it looks really, really nice for him. So I agree with you in terms of being a little bit afraid of Jimmy if you do feel good about the season and the fact that they are favored at home. I see Miami having a little bit more of that chip on their shoulder edge here, which is something that seems to be, pretty important. But the other thing is look, I'm just going to make some excuses. First of all, these refs are bad. They're bad everywhere. I disagree. If you want to say anything, maybe it comes back to it evens out in terms of the yin and yang, because they miss the calls that they should make. They make the calls that they shouldn't make almost evenly. It seems like they're just making the wrong call every time. It's very frustrating. But I would agree, look, people, I could also name you a couple of plays where PJ Tucker himself just gets smacked on the top of the head going to the rim a couple of times. Nothing happens from it. A big play comes down on the other side. You get an and one on Jaylen Brown going to the rim in transition after that missed call. Things like that happen on both sides. So I do think it evened out in that sense. And it's, not worth necessarily talking about to that degree. The thing that that you can't control, and is the reason that the NBA has become sort of what it has, and why it's difficult to bet on at times. A recent article came out where James Worthy is talking more trash on this current generation, saying all they do is practice threes, get tattoos, and tweet. And it was like, it's so old school, curmudgeon-y guy, but like also hilarious. But really, the 3-pointers is what I'm honing in on there, which is really, in the last, since 2016, there's been more 20-point blowouts in the playoffs than ever before. And there's the top 3 seasons with the most 20-point blowouts in the playoffs have come since 2016, including this one, which could actually break the record if there's a couple more between now and the end of the finals. So all that to say, these two teams are huge, sort of contributors to that stat right now, as we see them blowing out and getting blown out back and forth. And it's really about how many threes they make and what their percentage is. And it's so different in their wins and their losses. Just even looking at all the games in the playoffs for the C's, when they shoot 35% or better, they're from 3, they're 8-2. When they shoot worse than that, they're 3-4. When in the wins, they hit more threes. Their percentage is 5% percentage points better. The Heat are even more, of a stark contrast. There's a 9% difference, right? 35% in their wins from 3, 26 in their losses. They're actually shooting fewer 3-point attempts in those games and those wins, but they're still making 3 more. So they're just Are they hot or are they not? And that's really what it comes down to for them. I think you can rely on the fact that if Jimmy Butler is healthy, and this is once again what I was harping on before Game 6, then that does open up the 3-point shooting for them. And that's also indicative of this in this series. It's very clearly laid out and illustrated that in their losses where they're not hitting threes, Jimmy doesn't seem to be Jimmy. And then we start saying, well, how is he going to get better in 2 days? I don't know. I don't have an explanation for that, but he looked way better, and the game came to him in a way that he was in a lot more control. And I'm not really knocking the C's defense in Game 6 much more than I would, in previous matchups. I don't think there were that many open threes. I think you were right on. The one thing I would say is you can't leave Max Strus open. If you have to choose between a guy like Jimmy Butler having an open three or Max Strus having an open three, you got to leave Jimmy, or you've got to leave PJ Tucker. You just can't leave him, right? He's the guy on the floor. If Hero's in there, it's the same concept. Obviously, if Dunk is on the floor, it's the same concept. And there were too many rotations where the Celtics got unbalanced right away, like at the very beginning of the possession, and then they were just done because now they're just flying around and they don't even realize Max Strus is now the guy who's found space on the wing. And you're switch. There's 4 guys on one side of the court for the Celtics. Max Strus is on the opposite wing. It just takes 2 passes, and that's what the Heat are going to do if they have a guy like Jimmy who's able to at least draw the ire and the eyes of the defense to that degree. So I do think it's all going to be open for them. I do think a 197 and a half or so, even if it's like 199 by the time people are watching this, if it goes up a bit, it goes back to the 199 it opened at. I still think that this game goes over 200, 205 in that range. I think there's no reason to think it couldn't get to 210. So I'm focusing on that more than I am, this spread, which I do think is a pick 'em. And like I said, because I think that the only place I would place my money right now is on the Heat as dogs at home.
Wow, you hit on a lot of things there, but going back to the beginning, where you mentioned Rob Williams being the only guy that was affecting Jimmy Butler's shot. And that to me was a head scratcher, why he actually went to the scorer's table at one point in the fourth quarter, and then Udoka pulled him back, and he never re-entered the game as the Celtics struggled to keep him out of the paint and struggled in rotation when the Heat were able to get those open threes. So that is something to watch for sure. But yeah, the points to that we're talking about to the over does definitely seem like it's trending that way. The over hit in games 1 and 2 of this series in Miami. The Heat posted a 135 defensive rating in that game too, as the Celtics kind of cracked their defense. You look at the end of that Philly series, he averaged nearly 120 points per game in games 4 and 6 at home. In that one, when their back is against the wall, they do go over. They're 19 and 11 to the over as underdogs now this season. And Jimmy Butler is going to lead the way in that. And again, you go back to the value. I already hit Jimmy to get 28 points, which is his scoring prop. He just did not seem like he was being stopped by anybody the Celtics were throwing at him. Doesn't seem like the Heat have many options behind him. Like Bam wasn't even looking at the basket most of the time. It's on Jimmy to carry this offense. So I like that bet. I like the correlation that Jimmy gets 35 and a win is plus 800 at FanDuel. He's going to have to do that probably. I mean, if we're thinking over, if we're thinking a back and forth game, again, he has to carry such a heavy load. But if it's not a close game, it's probably because the Celtics are pulling away. They're still 5-0 after a loss in this postseason, winning by about 19 points per game. They're still 6-2 on the road in these playoffs. Doesn't really matter where the game is. It's more about how they respond to the pressure, whether they fold under it or whether they come back, as has been the trend all series. The team that just got punked comes back and does show up. So it'd be really interesting to watch. I think, it's a fun way to just bet on some points, bet on the over, and not sweat the result as much if you don't have a dog in this fight. But as we all know, I'm pulling for the Celtics to meet the Warriors in the finals.
I mean, as a basketball fan, so am I. I think that the C's and the Warriors would be super fun. It feels like you might even be considering a small wager on the Heat as sort of a hedge to your emotions, perhaps.
Yeah, that Heat by 1 through 10 is a way to hedge that. And Draymond apparently does not want to see the Celtics because he goes on live TV, says, we're playing Boston in the finals, just to basically give Miami some fuel. Because apparently, the Warriors would feel better, I think, about facing the Heat than the Celtics.
And I've talked about that, where the Celtics have been a bad matchup since the Warriors became this iteration of themselves with the Splash Bros, and they won that first championship in that season. And then the next year they went in, and who was the team that broke up their 28 game winning streak? But the Boston Celtics. They play them super well. They've been playing them super well. So I don't think they want to see them. But the last point I would touch on is what you said, which I do think is, look, we're sitting here saying we're going to bet. I mean, I'm saying specifically too. I'm looking at total before I look at the spread between these two teams, or the result between them. But and then I also mentioned the EV seems to be with the Heat in terms of underdogs at home, if you want to look at that sort of chip on your shoulder factor. But the other numbers that support the Celtics and the game theory that you said there, the correlation of if there is a blowout, then we do think it's much more likely that it's the Celtics. And that's also highly predicated on the fact that the Celtics have a much better offense. And if the Heat are going to go crazy on defense, what does that look like? What's really the Heat going crazy? On offense? What's the Heat really going crazy on offense look like? It looks like a lot of what it was in Game 6, which is Jimmy Butler carrying a ton of that load and being incredibly efficient, and then finding guys in open shooters. And if they do have Tyler Hero, one more open shooter. But either way, that the total is something that we eye a little bit more favorably there. And try to take advantage of and have a little bit more fun with. But yeah, I'll have a lot more fun just watching this game. Hopefully it's a good game, probably more than you, who will be sweating it out, hoping for that C's win. But either way, it's going to be Game 7. So we're all winning here. It's Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals, our favorite time and type of situation that we could possibly ask for. So that is all the time we have in our final Eastern Conference Finals video for you guys this season. Continue to follow along with us and like and subscribe, as we are bringing you each and every game for the NBA Finals, whomever it is taking on those Golden State Warriors. So until we see you next, happy betting.